Good morning from Houston, Texas. I'm Bryan Sory here with Hugh Brien. This is the Naval Aviation Podcast, and we talk about all things naval aviation. We try to bring on interesting guests and talk a little bit about the airplane and a lot about the man in the cockpit and his stories. So today with us is Hugh Brien, my good friend and co-host.
That's right.
Naval Aviation Podcast. Hugh went to Seton High in Manassas, Virginia, where he still lives. Then to BMI, commissioned in 1988, and flew the venerable CH-46 and HH-46 two-rotor helicopter.
That's right, tandem.
I am about to learn so much about because helicopters fly by magic, and we're about to learn how that works. So,
well, thanks, Bryan. It's always fun to do these, and I'll have to do a quick scan of and for those who at home, I just got my brand new CH-46 model. This is actually in the colors of HC-11, which was the squadron I was in.
Nice. And
it was the HC-11 gun bearers, and our call sign was side flare, which I always thought was cool. And it's always because we would come in and make pickup, and we'd slide in sideways to make
side flare.
Side flare 6-7 was the aircraft I flew it's the last aircraft I flew in HC-11 on my last day in November of '92.
And that was your legal U.S. CONUS.
Yeah. Well, obviously when you'd fly civilian, a lot of times you'd use, your numbers. So we would use Victor Romeo. Remember that. But when we flew around any military installation, or we'd use side flare. I'd even use side flare for talking to the controllers around San Diego because they knew who we were. So
I liked it. I was in the Vigilantes, and I loved our call sign. Our radio call sign was switch. And,
that's good.
Oh, man. But it would get awkward when you would be switching radio frequencies, and it would be like, switch.
That's right. Yeah, right.
Which is the right way to say it, but it's just
that's right.
It's awkward.
Right.
Okay, and then after flying, Hugh's going to go to DISA. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, Navy postgraduate school. After my first tour, it was 2.5 years.
Yep.
Master's there, which is a funny story unto itself, and then payback tour and a career change and some other things. And I ended up 4 years at the Defense Information Systems Agency, working in the Global Command and Control Center Program Office. And I was an 03, about 8 05s. It was horrible.
Was that interesting at all? Did you need
some of the ideas behind that program were indeed interesting, but the whole thing is, like all government competing projects, is a disaster.
So for the listener, naval aviators don't just fly. You're an officer first, or you should be.
Right.
But you will get, most guys will at some point get sucked into some oddball tours that are out of cockpit, and Hugh certainly had that, and I think we'll touch on some of those things later on in the episode. For the aviation homers at home, Hugh, could you just dig in real quick on the front end about the CH-46, and then we'll get into it heavy once we get there in your progression.
Yeah, so the 46 came out of Boeing helicopters. It's a tandem helicopter rotor setup, which is different than your tail rotor. I'll bring my model back in. So it has tandem rotors, and what's cool about this is in a regular helicopter with a tail rotor, your rotor turns and the tail rotor counteracts all your torque. In the tandem, what's cool about it is the rotors counter rotate. So this guy goes this way, this guy goes this way. So you don't need a tail rotor. But what's interesting, and a lot of people don't realize, is to go fore and aft, to go forward, actually the aft rotor increases in pitch and the forward rotor decreases in pitch, and it actually pushes itself that way. And as a result, what you ended up having to do was trim the actual rotor heads. The entire rotor head would trim forward so the aircraft could be kind of re-leveled with all that after you push the back end up, you got a nose low kind of setup. So you trim the rotors and it would level it out. Wow. And then for doing a yaw turn, this rotor, the forward rotor would tilt to the left and the aft would tilt to the right, in opposite directions. And then to go left and right, each rotor would tilt appropriately. And then right here under, it's a little hard to see with the color, but right up here, there was a sink shaft between the two engines. So you had your gas turbine engines, about 1,500 horsepower, went into a mix box, into the aft transmission, and then a sink shaft up to the forward transmission here. So that's kind of the basic setup. The 46, the ones that I flew in the Navy were built in the year I was born. So in 1966, they flew in the Marines and in the U.S. Navy. The Marines used them for troop transport, and we used them for logistics and SAR. And I got 1,000 hours in model in 30 months, which was pretty good, and did 2 Westpacks.
I noticed on Wikipedia they have all the variants listed out.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
And the thing must have been just a tinker toy, because there's 50 or 60 variants. Yeah. Can you explain why that is?
Well, with any naval aviation program that lasted, 40 years, they made a lot of improvements. So the basic models were UH, CH, and HH. And I never quite got the story. UH meant utility, CH meant cargo. I'm pretty sure I got this right. And HH was for STAR. But I never got the story on. They always had a reason for why UH and CH was a little different. But the A models, had smaller engines when they came out in the 60s, and they had these really crazy metal rotor blades.
Smaller than 1250 shaft.
Oh, yeah. It was, yeah.
That's already...
Yeah, that's right. I made a mistake. No, I think, yeah, that's right. So 1250, they were 1050, I think. And then the one I flew was 1250. Yeah, it wasn't 1500. I made a mistake there. Should have got my NATOPS out. But, yeah, it was...
Why don't you bone up for the next interview, okay? Come prepared for the brief.
23,000 pounds gross weight. And there were just, they would put stuff on them. Like every model in our squadron seemed to be a little bit different. Like one would have 2 radios, one would have an extra radio. There was one model, the HH model, had this loud hailer. It's called a giant speaker on the left side of the aircraft. We had, and then the SAR model had a Doppler radar.
Loud hailer?
It was called loud
so I see the guitars on the back.
Yeah.
You're a music fan, right?
Yeah, and a really bad guitar player.
Well, I've heard you're better than me. So I just heard an album out of England.
Right.
Called Loud Hailer, and
oh my God, that's hilarious.
Left back cobbled together awesome female rockers and put this album together. And I can't remember these gals' name, but they rock super hard.
That's awesome. Yeah, Loud Hailer.
It's a great album. So
that was my call sign for about a month in the squadron.
Loud Hailer?
Loud Hailer, yeah, because I was loud.
I would have. Could you have kept that?
Too many syllables. That's the problem. It would have to have been shortened to be effective.
I'd have lobbied for that. That's all.
No.
Loud Hailer. Want to hook up? Yeah. Yes, I do.
Right. Yeah. It was crazy. But yeah, so we had HC-11 had about 23, 24 aircraft. It's about 450 people maybe. I think I'm getting these numbers right. It's been a while. And we had 11 detachments. And I flew in detachment 4 and detachment 7.
What's a detachment?
So the way it would work is our squadron would man 1 and 2 plane detachments.
Okay.
1 and 2 aircraft, 1 and or 2 aircraft detachments to deploy on logistics ships, on supply ships. So we take a 2-plane det, deploy it onto, let's say, the USS Kansas City, which was an oiler / cargo ship. or the USS Supply. And you would dead up with 7 officers, 25 enlisted guys, and go to sea. And that oiler, that supply ship would be part of a larger carrier battle group. And so we would go to deploy. So in Desert Storm, we had 2 detachments in the Ranger battle group. And we did lots of ammo, lots of cargo runs, lots of stuff.
When I flew P3s, we had the debt mentality. That's not a thing in Hornets.
Yeah.
And, guys would turn into like little rival gangs. The various debts would act like I don't even know you anymore. You're not part of my.
It was never that. Helicopters in general aren't that competitive. We weren't.
P3s aren't either. It was just I haven't seen you in months. And I'm pretty proud of the way we do business, and I don't know how you do business. And
yeah, I seriously, I don't think we really had that kind of view. Like when we would meet up in the Philippines, it was always, hey, let's go out, hey, party on, let's go. It was always, I always got along with guys in other debts. I never really
talk about that as soon as possible.
Right.
Okay. One thing that I've always been intrigued with is your dad.
Yes.
And this may be true in the modern era. No immigrant to the U.S. has risen to head a U.S. 3-letter agency, right? I'm sure that was true post-revolution, but in the modern era, I'm not aware of anyone else who's achieved that.
Well, now remember, he wasn't. He was he was chief of the U.S. Border Patrol at the end of the 80s. Now, back then, that was under the Immigration and Naturalization Service. So he wasn't – I'm not trying not to take anything away from him.
Sure.
But back then, the Border Patrol only had 4,000 agents, and he had a staff of 10. Now there's 25,000, and there's the headquarters staff at the Reagan building is 500. So it's a lot. It's a different organization. But, yes, he was in charge. He was the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol from 87 to 90.
Do you know when the Border Patrol was founded? Because I really
it's horrible. I have the book somewhere in the house, the U.S. Border Patrol history that my dad gave me when I was 10.
He was pretty early in it, though, right? This thing was
probably the 30s. I remember pictures, maybe the 20s, there's only been, I think, 13 chiefs in the histories. So it's maybe the 30s.
That's remarkable. As an immigrant,
he came in
we breezed the listener right in there. So Hugh's dad comes over in 46.
53.
Yeah. And he gets in the Border Patrol and will eventually head the agency.
Isn't that crazy?
And, I mean,
it's a great story of American success,
Really,
and he literally came here on a boat with $50, and he and his friend Pete Sullivan, his first cousin, they both ended up in New York, and Dad moved furniture for Castro convertibles. And then he decided to join, like every Irishman, he was going to be a cop. So he applied to NYPD, the New York Staties, and the U.S. Border Patrol. And
that's a thing in Irish culture. Hugh and I went to Ireland last year. And
that's right.
The black and tans, they right?
Well, no.
I'm sorry. That was the Brits.
Right. Oh, yeah. Be careful, brother. You'll get me hung.
No, they'll send a guy to my house. So, it's a very prideful thing to be a lawman in Ireland.
Yes. And my grandfather was and this is what I always mess up, the RIC, the Royal Irish Constabulary. And we talked a little bit about that. We could even do a podcast on that sometime. But yeah, and then when my dad came here when he was 22. But interestingly enough, before he came here, he was a big athlete in Ireland and played center forward for Dublin Miners in Gaelic football. And then he got banned from Gaelic football, which is hilarious. And then he started playing soccer, and he was a goalie for Shelburne Football Club for 3 years. And he played in at least 2 Irish Cup finals in the the Irish soccer league.
You know, it's interesting. My dad's a lot better athlete than me.
My dad was too.
He could have played college baseball. He passes that opportunity up to ride bulls.
I know that's.
And he became a professional bull rider. That's his saddle back there, which I also roped on, but I wasn't at that level of athleticism.
Sure.
You know, and I wonder if that's a thing for the children of people who then go into naval aviation. It's just 2 data points, but whatever. We're way off.
We're way off.
And that's my fault. All right, so you're a kid, you're living in Manassas. I think this is true for everybody. When do you remember first catching the flying bug? When did that thing fully bite you in the ass and you're like, that's what I'm going to do when I...
It wasn't until very late. It wasn't until I was in college, actually.
Okay.
I did have the idea of, the notion...
You're all the way in college.
Yeah, but I remember going to see the movie Top Gun when I was in high school.
Of course.
Of course.
Greatest recruiting film of all time.
And now they're making Top Gun 2. I just saw a tweet from Tom Cruise.
I don't know if I believe it.
Okay, either way, it's still cool. But that movie was really, I went and saw it probably 3 or 4 times with my buddy Pete McCrary. And he was the guy who I think he probably got me to go to it, but he was the aviation guy. He had models of all these jets, and we'd be talking in his room. He had made a model of an F-18, I think, and an F-16, and I could never tell the difference. But he knew immediately, right away.
Okay, so I decided to go to the Air Force Academy because I had the flying bug.
Right.
You decided to go to VMI
because I went down there and I should go to college here. And I hadn't decided what I wanted to do when I got there. The Navy ROTC was an idea, but I didn't know anything about the military in general. So I went there more as a kind of, I said I should go here because it would be cool to graduate from this place. And I didn't have any other options, right? I didn't get into any other college, sadly. Yeah. My SATs really
it's actually kind of hard to get in there. So why are you able to get in there but not?
Well, no, VMI back in the day. Now, we just had my 30-year reunion, and we were lamenting the sheer number of my brother rats from VMI that would not get accepted today if they applied the way they are now. Okay. The other thing, too, about VMI is it's huge on legacy. So if you can get letters of recommendation from alumni, and I had I had one guy who's kind of famous in the Civil War community. His name was Van Nayswald. He was class of 48, and he actually worked as a ranger and a historian here in Manassas. And he actually lived in the old stone house, I think, for a while back in maybe the 50s or 60s, which is a landmark here in Northern Virginia. But he wrote me a letter somehow, and then my friend Pete, his dad, Pete McCrary, was class of 57, and then my chemistry high school teacher, who was a Navy commander, Mr. Conley, he wrote me a letter. And I didn't get in. I didn't even get accepted until probably the end of May. I was like the last guy in my class to get accepted. I was the last guy probably on the waiting list.
I'm a huge history buff, and for those watching, if you ever go to Manassas, Virginia,
right?
Hugh said that he will personally tour you around.
Sure.
To all the
the battlefields,
historical sites. You can go see where Stonewall Jackson stands. Yeah. What's his real first name?
Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson.
Thomas
Jonathan Jackson.
There stands Stonewall Jack. No. There stands Jackson like a stone wall.
Rally behind the Virginians.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff.
What a stud. Do you think it happened like that?
Well, I do. Yeah, I do. I think so. I think because there were witnesses. There were a lot of, remember, there were a lot of spectators out there that day.
That's right.
Out of the Civil War. And there were a lot of people hanging out. So I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. It might have been elevated, or he might not have, it might have just happened in a moment. You know, you really, the way they tell it, it kind of stretches it out like it was this 2 or 3 minute thing, but it might have just happened quickly. And it was basically just maybe a quote, you know, it was almost a throwaway quote, but I think it probably did. Jackson was a zealot, you know, he was a very religious man. He was a little crazy, I think, but just a brilliant tactician, apparently. Now, this is not me. This is my buddies who are Civil War history. Like my roommate from college is a huge, Sam Tate. He's a huge Civil War historian. He knows a lot about it. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the Manassas, good place to grow up, and battlefields.
That's Manassas. So you've already kind of hinted at it, but I want to ask, like, what kind of kid were you? Because I get a lot of questions from dads who are trying to force their kids into Naval Aviation. I had one just last week, and sadly, I'll kind of do a quick review of the kid, and you're like, I don't know, guy. Like, you know, if he doesn't turn the ship right now, it's not going to be an option. Like, and you can tell that from a very young age. So, and I also don't love the idea of trying to force an 8-year-old into an academy. It just doesn't happen like that. It's generally, oddly enough, it's kind of a late decision. It's like, oh, I might want to go. And the reason I believe it works like that is you have enough gas in the tank. Whereas if you're like, I'm an 8-year-old and I'm going to the Air Force Academy, you're out of gas by the time you hit your freshman year.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that.
Right? So kind of describe briefly what kind of kid you were. Were you good academically? Were you well-rounded? How would you describe yourself? Yeah, so
I was one of 5, and I had 4 sisters, 3 older, 1 younger. And the biggest thing was I've always felt real insecure as a kid. Like, I always never felt like I belonged anywhere. I started out as an okay student, and it just kind of went down from there. It wasn't even so much bored. I just wasn't interested. And every day that you talk to me, I'm stealing, this is the line from a comedian somewhere, but he goes, every day you talk to me was my worst day because I was at school. I just hated it. I liked to go to work. I had jobs, you know, starting when I was 14. I was janitor at the mall. You know, I was worked in a clothing store and worked as a janitor, and then I worked summer jobs, and I hated school. And what I was going to, just to make a long story short, the thing when I got into flying, I loved it primarily because one of the aspects of it, it occupies all your senses. Mm-hmm. All of your senses are actively engaged. And I always love that about flying. It's your mind, your hearing, you're having to speak, you have to feel how the aircraft, you know, there's a lot, and it just occupies everything, and that appealed to me. And that was part of my love for it. There's that, and I love that you'd learn a thing. It was like wax on, wax off. Yeah. You're out of focus a little bit. Okay. You would learn a little module, and you would go apply it. Yes. And like magic, because they've been doing it so long, and they're very good at it. Yeah. The Naval Aviation instructors, it would happen just like they said it was going to happen. That's right. Right? That's so true. I can't emphasize that enough. You know, the military in general, you know, they recruit people who they have kind of scientifically figured out can pass. So the thing is that they tell you at the beginning of every class, every module, whatever it is, these are the learning objectives. This is what you need to know and do. And if you do it, you'll pass. So they always set you up for success, you know, and that's what I loved about it. And you're right. Like when they would talk about, this is the one that always got me. And I was a little late to the party on, you know, just visual flying, like put this part of the cowling on the horizon, have it slice across the horizon. That will be a level turn, right? And when I finally at first I couldn't. I go, what? Just the cowling on the? I don't know. I just wasn't getting it. And then I did it, and of course, everything they tell you works exactly how they tell you. It's great. It's the best.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is the special operator community does this also. When I say special operator, I mean SEALs,
sure,
Delta, Force Recon. The Air Force has some pretty neat guys. I can't remember what.
The PJs. The PJs.
And we were doing a prep call last week for an event that's coming up down here in Houston. And it's being run by SEALs, former SEALs. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes, okay, here's what average sounds like. And then he gives you kind of a scene. And he goes, now here's what great sounds like. Scene.
Yeah.
And for those of us who had never gone through this scenario, we were able to kind of compare and contrast average versus outstanding. Mm-hmm. You know how rare that is? But he's pulling off his military background is where he learned to do that.
Yeah.
And for every guy on the call, everyone was either a SEAL or Delta or a former fighter guy. We were all like, okay, I can put that together, thanks. Right? And it was just refreshing to see all that training put into a neat little package and made applicable to civilian life. I was like,
yeah,
amazing.
Just to kind of finish the thought on the growing up stuff, one thing we did, we had kids in our neighborhood, and we ran around outside all day long. I mean, it sounds cliche because kids don't do that, like we did. I mean, I know there are lots that still do, but we would get up in the morning and go out and ride bikes, and we taught ourselves to skateboard in the 70s, and we built a quarter pipe skateboard ramp that I have some crazy pictures of riding when we were 12. It was an eyesore, but we just did it anyway. We all, some of us had paper routes. You just were outside all the time, and I think that while I learned a lot of mental toughness over time, that being a kid running around outside and falling down and, falling out of a tree or getting hit with a rock or whatever, it just toughened you up. No one was running to tell on other people, to squeal on them to mothers. Now one thing, I was not a good fighter, and the kids in my neighborhood, the guys I hung out with were always a little bigger and older. I was a scrawny kid, and they used to put the beating on me once in a while, but I was all right. I would talk a lot of shit, and then they would beat me up. That happened a lot. That happened even in high school a little bit when I was at public school for a year. And
take a couple whippings.
Yeah, we were running around. I was average at several sports. Pretty good at soccer, basketball. Played whatever. Just could play, figure it out. And then VMI, went down to VMI, visited the place, and it's like, oh, I should go here. I didn't know what I was getting into, but yeah.
Do you think VMI better prepared you to be an officer and an aviator than had you gone to a civilian school?
Yeah, yes and no. It's a double-edged question. Number one is VMI, again, just put more kind of mental toughness in you.
Sure.
And it gave you some quite a few leadership opportunities, kind of, in fire teams or platoons. I was a platoon commander when I was a senior, when I was a first classman. But the one thing VMI became such a what's the word I'm looking for? When you have when two forces are opposed to each other, like when you're in trial, what do they call it? Anyway, with the cadets were so up against the administration that there was a culture where you would just be defiant. It got very kind of defiant in the years that I was there. Not in any super negative way, but by the time you got out of VMI, you were kind of done with all the yet another military initiation, right? You spent 4 years, you did this rat line. It was 6 months. It was really hard. And as you go up the chain, you're going through little military cultural initiations. And by the time you get commissioned, and you go to your first training school, and in Pensacola, it was aviation indoc for ROTC grads. People telling me how to shine my shoes, I was like, F off. I can spit shine shoes better than you ever could, brother. Don't even get on me about this. I had a lot of contempt for people that were going to tell me how I should be an officer. I really did. And it probably wasn't the best attitude to have. But over time, I think the guys that I flew with, at least as an aircraft commander, I did very well in kind of being the leader of the team. I think it did pretty good. And I have some people who've told me that, so I'm not just making that up.
Well, sometimes I wonder if that kind of fuck off isn't a little bit the point. So,
right, yeah.
For anyone who hasn't read Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, he was the guy building indoctrination and acceptance criteria for the Israeli Defense Force.
Sure.
But we had people in the U.S. doing much the same thing. Now, Kahneman has vastly surpassed everyone else in terms of his fame in behavioral economics, but there are guys in the U.S. nearly as good. And there is so much psychological stuff going on under the hood at the academies.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes because that kind of F-off attitude is pretty universal amongst academy graduates. And I've wondered maybe if that's not the point of it all, is because there's value in that guy that's willing to go, wow, fuck.
Yeah, it was interesting that the academy guys in Pensacola really had a leg up because they had the gouge.
Yeah.
Now, when I got to flight school in May, I actually went to flight school right after graduation. I was home for maybe 9 days, and then I got in my car and I drove down to Pensacola. And it would have been at Memorial like this. It would have been this time. It would have been right at the Memorial Day. It was the Memorial Day weekend after, and that's when our class started. And driving down there, but the Naval Academy guys that I went through with were all from '87. They had all been stashed for a year and were waiting to start, or many of them. And so I was the only guy from VMI down there at the time. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. And what I failed to realize is that the academy guys, and maybe other people too, like the guys who went through OCS, they all had the gouge. They had all the tests.
I didn't have the gouge.
There were so many people with the gouge. It was hilarious. And I would wonder, I'd be sweating these tests. I lived in the POQ at Whiting, and I would just get my book bag and I'd go over to the study place every night and I'd be writing things down and learning it. These guys would how did you not have to study for this test? And they would they would laugh. And then I heard about it later, the gouge. That was the thing. I don't know if it still goes on, and I'm not, listen, however you can get through it, fine. But yeah, it was hilarious. Now the other thing too is the academies and others, they're just like every other college, and at least in the sense that, some people love it and they went to the Naval Academy naval officers and they're really good at it. But then, there's always the guys who get, for the first couple of years they're in the service, they go, God, I had enough of the military. And they're just, they're doing all the right stuff, but they're not real. At VMI, I used to say they're not real strack. They're not, spit shined up and that kind of thing.
That's a badass word.
Yeah, it's a good word.
I'm the worst interviewer ever. We're at 45 minutes.
All right.
So
we can go over a little bit. It's all right.
What's that famous bar with all the memorabilia in Pensacola?
The Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's.
Yes.
Was that a thing when you were in ATI and primary?
Oh, yeah. I think the Blue Angels even went there.
Did you go?
Oh, yeah. We'd go there. They had bands on the weekends, and the guy that ran it was still there, Joe. He was still alive.
This is going to hit this weird. What kind of car did you have?
Oh, well, the first car I bought was a 1985 Nissan 300ZX Turbo.
Wow.
I had that for a while, but I couldn't
afford
the insurance.
Was that your ensign mobile?
What's that?
Was that your ensign mobile?
Yeah, for about a year, and then I had to get rid of, not even, I don't think I had it that long. I couldn't afford the insurance or the payments because, I was making, $1,000 a month, $1,200 a month. I couldn't afford it. So I traded it in for a truck. I got a Nissan pickup truck, 4x4, and I broke that. And then I got a Nissan Sentra, a little 4-door runaround car, which I had for probably 12 years. Drove that across country a couple times. And so I just had my little Nissan car. That was great. It was like, I remember the payments were like $160 a month and the insurance was, I don't know, nothing. So it was just, that was one of those lessons you had to learn as a young man.
Now,
save your money.
You said a word a little bit ago, and I'm going to ask you to dig in on it a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think it differentiates VMI grads from the other academies, if we want to call VMI an academy, and I do consider it and the Citadel amongst the big three. Where did Brother Rat come from, and what do you think explains this incredible, you see it nowhere else, this loyalty between graduates of VMI?
Sadly, the Rat line and the origins of that, I can't recall them off the top of my head. It's been around, well, the Institute started in 1839, and the notion of the Rat line was pretty early on, if I'm not mistaken. George Catlett Marshall was class of 01, and he was a rat. So I always thought that was interesting. Like thinking about, or even General George Patton was in the Rat line before he went to West Point. To think about some of these guys from history, Dabney Coleman, the actor. When you think about some of these guys from history, as rats, that was always interesting to me. And remember too, I was telling my son this the other day, there are, at any given time, I think at Virginia Tech, and any of these large schools, there's 40,000 people there, let's say.
Right.
But I think there's only ever been 30,000 folks who actually went to VMI. I don't know the number of graduates versus attendees, but it's less than 40,000 in the entire history of the Institute. There's only 1,200. When I was there, the average is about 12 or 1,300 cadets. I know General P, the current superintendent, is trying to increase that number. But they've turned it into, they've made it, they've changed it a lot. And a lot of it for the good. I don't think any of it's for the bad, but I think they've taken away some things that they didn't need to, or changed it. But you know what? Here's what I always say. The past is history, and if you go to VMI on a Wednesday night in February, it still sucks to go there. How about that? It still sucks to go to VMI. It's hard. It's not an easy college experience.
Right. So it's exclusivity.
Yes.
Shared crucible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, let me put it to you this way.
A long lineage, too. Like, the Air Force Academy is 56? And you're 1839?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to whisk this through primary because no one cares. You specifically picked helos.
I did. I literally did.
I've heard guys say that.
That's right.
That they're saying that because they didn't have the grades to do anything else.
Correct.
And so it's somewhat, it assuages this pain to say, I wanted helicopters. No, you didn't. You didn't have another option, so you're saying that. But you did have other options.
I think so. I had good grades. Yeah, I had no downs. I did not get one failure in all of my flight training in primary.
So I think it's kind of rare that a guy with the grades to have options specifically picks helicopters. Can you tell us?
Yeah, two reasons. One reason was even after all of that, I lacked a little self-confidence. And second thing was my eyes. So back in the day, if your eyes went bad before you got your wings, you could get booted out of the program. And so, yes, and you needed 20/20 uncorrected, no ifs, ands, or buts, right? So what happened is I went to flight school, got past my flight physical, but I've got a really weird little stigmatism, and the close-in vision test always was real on the margin. So my flight physical, whenever it was, while I was in primary, halfway through primary, I go to my flight physical and I failed the close vision test.
Yeah.
What they would do is they would take the card, it was a card, and they put a string, there was a string attached to it, and you'd hold it on your chin and they put the card this far away, and you had to read the tiny letters, one eye, the other eye, right? So it's so funny. So I go in there, I'm really upset because I failed. So over the weekend, the doc goes, just sit in the dark all weekend, don't drink, and come back on Monday fresh as a daisy. I'm not shitting you. That's what he said. It was hilarious.
Whoa.
So I spent the weekend at my buddy Ray's house, Ray Dyer and Chris Peckham. They were guys from VMI, and they lived in Gulf Breeze because they were not.
Did you not drink?
I know I didn't party hard. I might have had a beer or two, but nothing like I normally did. Right. I wasn't, getting in trouble. Anyway, so I get in there, and the corpsman, the first class corpsman, was kind of supervised. He was a supervisor in there. And the first guy that gave me the test, I was kind of struggling with it. And the corpsman just comes over and pushes the guy aside. He goes, I got this. He holds the string up. As I'm reading it, he kind of leans in. He goes, I got you covered here. He totally got me through. And then what happened was that was halfway through. And my fear was I needed to get through flight training before my next flight physical. Helicopters was the easiest way to do it. And as it turned out, pardon the pun, I flew through flight school. I was done by August the following year. I got winged in a year and 2 months. I was an ensign. I got my wings, right?
I was an ensign when I hit the fleet as well, but certainly not that fast. And
yeah.
Because the P3 rag is very slow.
Yeah,
but
14 months I was through. So that was pretty crazy. But those are my two reasons. The only regret I have is that it would have been fun to fly other aircraft. It would have been great. Just
100%.
Yeah.
Do you remember lifting off the ground in a Bell Jet Ranger the first time?
Yeah. I'm blank. I should have brought my logbook up. But my on-wing. Here's what I remember on my very first fan.
You remember your on-wing's name?
I can't remember it. It's in my my helicopter on-wing, Lieutenant. It's embarrassing.
Okay, that's
anyway.
Do you remember your primary on-wing's name?
Yeah, Pete Battaglia.
Everyone remembers the primary guy.
Yeah.
And I can't remember my intermediate guy at all.
Right. Yeah.
Michael Villar was my guy.
Yeah, Pete Battaglia was my P3. He was a P3 guy, and he was my on-wing. And he was pretty low-key guy. Nice. He was nice to me.
Okay, so lifting off.
Yeah. Here's what I remember. Because when you do helicopters the first time, the instructor does the takeoff. And then you transition to forward flight. And then this was the great part about it. I just remember taking the controls at 800 feet, flying course rules, which for those of you at home, course rules are just they're the rules about how you fly around Pensacola to navigate between bases or facilities. It's like, go down here, fly Route 89, make a right at Route 10, fly down here till you see this field or to the water tower, etc. Anyway, I just remember taking controls and I could fly. Like I go, I'm just flying a helicopter. I mean, because you already knew how to fly an airplane. You had an air sense about you. And the great thing about helicopters, everything happens in slow motion. You're going at 100 knots.
Yeah.
It was really fun. And I was like, okay. I think maybe by my third flight, I was getting the hovering thing down. By 4, I could hover, and it took a couple of flights, but yeah, you could hover. And then, the big thing was more than that, it was the auto rotations that were in.
All right. So San Diego is kind of a sleepy little town when you get there, right? It's not
Coronado. Well, the Naval Air Station North Island is in Coronado.
So like late 80s, early 90s, it's not like the San Diego of today at that point, right?
Yeah, 89. It was 89. It was November 89. I don't know about Sleepy Town so much. And it's very different. There's a lot more people there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And downtown's a lot different.
Downtown was still kind of seedy. Right?
Yeah, no one lived downtown. There wasn't a lot of action downtown. Everyone went to like Mission Beach or Ocean Beach, all the bars down there. No one really went downtown to party.
Did you have a favorite bar?
Well, yeah, I like the I-Bar at the O Club at North Island. Used to go a lot because you just then would be drunk and you'd walk back to your BOQ room. No, there was a lot of memory. I was just like, I like when people, if any naval aviators watch this, when I was at Whiting, there wasn't a bar in the BOQ. That bar they built when I was there. There was just a lobby at the Whiting BOQ there. They built the bar that's they built the bar that's inside the BOQ when I was there. And we used to go there quite a bit because you just walked downstairs and you were in there. It was great. You had a big TV and Nintendo down there, and the bartenders would always chat you up. They were real nice. And but yeah, I went to the I-Bar. I used to go to Danny's Pub which had really good hamburgers, the Slam Burger, home of the Slam Burger. And then that bar, the one where all the SEALs go, across from the Hotel Del. I'm just blank. Oh my God, my memories. Not Shaughnessy's. This is embarrassing.
It's like a mix something. I used to have a T-shirt from it.
Yeah. Oh, that's horrible. I have no memory. Anyway, so yeah, we would just go wherever. I don't know if I had a favorite bar per se, but we did go to the I-Bar a lot.
Well,
the history of that.
So now, how long did it take you to get through the 46 rag?
Let's see, November, December, January, February, like 4 or 5 months. Not too bad.
Rapid. Okay, and what was your first fleet squadron?
HC-11. So HC-3 was the RAG, and then HC-11, Hell Supron 11, which was right next door. You would walk across the bridge, and you were there.
Okay.
Yeah, it was great. And I remember the first day I got there. This was a defining moment in my life. And this is why I'm very nostalgic about my naval service, because I remember going across the bridge and I just had my wings, and I got my new name tag, and that was a big deal to get your colored. I thought it was. You got your colored squadron name tag for your khakis and for your flight suit. Anyway, so I go over there, and I think I went to the safety office, and there are these 3 lieutenants in there. Yeah.
Did the squadron come over and hand you, like fighter guys do a patching, and
no,
a representative of the fleet squadron will come over and hand you
no, it's just they got your orders. They said go next door. Yeah. I'm not kidding. It was really that. It wasn't that.
Okay.
There was a lot less celebrating,
Yeah.
your efforts. Everyone just kind of, okay, I got through it. But the thing I remember more than anything else, it was kind of like I walked into the safety office, and I think John Wheeler was in there, Dean Wackerman. Dean was really funny. Yeah. His wife made Admiral, actually. Linda Evans Wackerman. Anyway, the 3 guys that were in there, I think that's who was in there. I walk in, I'm still an ensign. I come to attention. I go, Ensign Bryan reporting for duty, or reporting to get my chit signed or my check-in sheet. And they just started laughing at me, and they like, dude, no, that's not how it works here. They're like, don't be an idiot. And they're like, and they shook my hand, and they go, welcome aboard. And I mean, it was like this light went on. I go, this is where I belong, for what it's worth. I go, this is the first time I felt like, I fit in almost immediately. Yeah, you still have the hoops to jump through, but, you had gone through all this for, VMI, and then flight school, and the RAG, and all this training and more training. And you got to this place, and there was not another military initiation. You just did your job now, and I love that. was such a relief. I mean, other than like the last one, I remember when we went to SEER school. I remember, Jesus, not another military, checkbox. But then you didn't have them for a while. It was really nice. And I remember that moment really clearly being like this sense of relief. It was cool.
Yeah. No, I can totally get down with that because.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Bless you.
So from when you check in to your fleet squadron, HC-11, to your first deployment, how long is that going to be?
Yeah, so April of 90 is when I checked in, and we went to Desert Storm in December of 90.
April of 90 to, okay.
Yeah.
Now, was Desert Storm a surprise to you? Was that like a September 11th? Holy shit, or did you have some idea that this is coming?
Well, we knew that Desert Shield had started in the summer, right? If you recall, that fall. So we were all gearing up to go. I mean, it was one of the few times that almost all the aircraft had left HC-11. Like all the there were so many detachments out at sea. Normally there'd be maybe 2 or 3 detachments gone, or 4 at any given time. But this time, the bulk of them were deployed, which was interesting. And so that was a first, if I'm not mistaken. I could have that wrong, but yeah, most of the aircraft were gone from home guard at HC-11. They were all deployed on ships. So yeah, we left in December 8th of 1990.
So HC-11, I'm familiar with the DET concept, but usually you deploy the whole squadron and then they dead out.
No, right? Everyone deaded out of San Diego.
You guys deaded all the way from San Diego.
Yeah. So what it would work is we would take, like, for us in HC-11 Det 7, we would fly up to Alameda. We'd take our 2 aircraft and we'd fly them up to Alameda and land at Alameda, and we'd put them on the USS Kansas City, which was an oiler supply ship attached to the Ranger Battle Group. So then what we would do is we'd try to, did we fly the whole Det? Sometimes we would, the Det and a lot of the gear would be shipped, and we'd bring as much as we could in the aircraft, and then we'd load it all up on the ship, and we'd go to sea. And then, so we went out of San Francisco, and it was cool. We got to fly over Alcatraz and the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was really cool. And what we would do is over that fall, I think we did 2 warm-up dets on the ship, so we could all get qualified as a work in the tower, because the junior officers have to run the tower on the ship. Mm-hmm. It's really fun. It's kind of arduous at times, but it's still fun. You get to talk on all the radios, and it was good. And just get comfortable, get everyone up to speed for flying those aircraft on and off that ship.
So you're heading west aboard which ship?
USS Kansas City. It's now Razor Blades somewhere. AOR 3.
It's Razor Blades?
Yeah. I think all the AOR class ships are what was it? The Milwaukee, the Wabash, the Kansas City. There were 6 of them, I think, in that class of ship, and they're all gone now.
So in my head, where I'm steaming to, Hugh Point, and
yeah, we did actually.
I never got to go there. Take me there, Hugh. Take me.
Well, so we got on the ship. I'll make this succinct.
Don't make it succinct.
All right.
This is where I wanted to get to.
Okay, this is really fun. All right, we got on the boat on December 8th. We landed the aircraft, and then because the war was happening, we did a great circle route all the way to the Philippines. So it was nonstop. So we cruised from the 8th through the 24th, maybe? No, we were at sea for Christmas. So the 25th, 26th. So maybe the 8th through the 29th or something. Nonstop. We ended up going, what people don't realize, when you go Great Circle, you go like way north of Hawaii. Like, it's really cold up there. It's just a lot of gray days and just driving in a straight line. And having to change the clocks every day or every other day. You had to, change time zones. That was funny. Anyway, so we go to the Philippines, and going to the Philippines was like going back in time to like 1970 and or 1965 to some degree for a bunch of reasons. But one of them was, when you went out in town, they still had those old jeepney buses. They were like little Jeeps. You have to look it up. It's a jeepney. It's like a Jeep that had an extended trunk on the back, and they, paint them up, and you would pay to get a ride on them. But anyway, so you pull in there. There's when you pull into Subic Bay, when you pulled in there, the QB point was on the right. The naval, where all the ships were, was on the left, and in the middle was kind of along a post city. That's the way to think about it. And the runway, there was just one runway, and it was at the bottom of a hill, which was the QB point. Now, the way I understand it is, and I could be wrong about this, is Construction Unit Battalion 1. That's where QB came from. That's where the name. I think that's right, but we could Google check that. And the officers club and the pool was at the top of the hill. And for the helicopter jets, we got to fly off, and the carrier pier was on that side also, next to the airfield. So we were a deep water draft ship, the Kansas City was, so we were on that side also. So the carrier and us, we pulled up on the QB point side next to the base. So that was one thing that happened. That was pretty interesting. And then the helicopters got to dead off, and I'm trying to make sure I get this right, maybe at the south end of the field, I'm not visioning this right, but at one end of the field, there were these Quonset huts, and there was a ramp down to these Quonset huts at the end of the runway, and that's where the helicopters would go park while you were there. But it was cool because it was kind of a steep little drop-off, and when you taxied down there, you taxied with your nose wheel up off the ground, so you wouldn't roll down too fast. It was kind of cool. And then you had to get kind of a running start to get up that hill. Yeah, it was fun. Then and some of us, I think we got rooms at the BOQ there, which were pretty sweet, like 2 or 4 man bunk room. And it was awesome there, man. You'd go, the pool was there. You get my drinks, on the pool. The waiters would come out, and people were playing jungle ball in the pool, and everyone had really bad sunburns because, if you're out in the sun for 10 minutes at the equator, you're pasty white. In the winter, you get burned. I know. Well, so here's the funny story. This is probably let me jump ahead just a little to fill it, because this is funny. On the way home, this is in May. Hey, am I doing this right? I got to think for a second. Did we pull back in? I may be getting this. At one point, we were at the pool, and I got really sunburned and really blistery, like sunburn, and got really hammered. I was just freaking wasted.
Just shammered, yeah.
Just shammered. So go crash in the room. My buddy John Brien, who was the aircraft commander, kicks the bed at like 7 a.m. I think I might have been still hammered. He goes, "We got a mission. We got to fly the Admiral over to the embassy." I'm like, dude, you're the only one who's here. You got to go. So I get on my flight suit. Everything is in pain. And we get down there. I got to put on my flight gear and my helmet, and it's all blistered. It's just a nightmare. And we get in the bird, and I remember John telling me this because he had been there previously. He was talking about the history of Bataan, the Bataan Death March, and all that stuff happened right around there, which was kind of neat. And then I ended up reading some books about it, but it was cool. The Bataan Cross, and anyway, we flew the Admiral over the hill across Manila Bay to the embassy. The embassy's right on the water there, and the LZ is pretty small. I mean, there's a fence around there, and I remember just going in and coming in and landing and walking in, waiting for the Admiral. We're in our green flight suits and walking in there just all, raccoon-eyed, and just the Marine security guards looking at us with such disgust and disdain.
We're just news at this point.
What's that?
You're just sweating booze at this.
They kind of were like, you guys. You could see them going, fucking Navy. So that was, but it was really fun. And I actually have somewhere in my kit somewhere. There's a Admiral Zlatiper wrote us a note. He wrote us a little card and thanked us for doing that. I have that somewhere. I got to find it. But he became, I think, a 4-star admiral.
Thanks for flying while you were wasted, Hugh.
I just love being there. And I think that picture, though, the picture that's on the podcast of me in my helmet, I think that was that day. Because John took I think that was the day I was it was not good.
Did y'all
I was still under the influence, but boy, I was a mess.
Did y'all have O2 to heal thyself in that helicopter?
No, heal thyself. That's funny. No. But with T-34s, when I went to Bergstrom Air Force Base on my cross-country flight in T-34s, we met up with these wild weasel drivers, these F4 guys at Bergstrom, which is now the Austin airport. Oh, my God. We ended up playing – I don't know why. I don't know. All I remember was we were playing dice. I lost. They took all my patches, like even my American flag, and I remember hitting the O2 on the way home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to heal myself on the reg.
That's right.
The
Philippines. Let me just throw a couple more things in.
Oh, yeah, because you didn't take us out in town. Oh, I had a really specific question.
Okay.
Could the town girls from town, could they come on base to the officer club pool? Were they there, or was it all dudes in the pool?
No, there were I can't speak to this. I remember there was a massage service by women at the O Club, at the pool. But I don't know, I'm sure they all had work permits or something. And I didn't personally experience any of that.
Right.
But you can get a massage at the pool at the QB Club, for what it's worth. Yeah. Okay, here's one more story. So it's not funny, it's just weird. So you have to remember, too, this is all pre-tailhook scandal, right?
Yeah. And
the tailhook scandal, for those of you who don't know, you can look it up. It's a big scandal of a sexual assault in Las Vegas at the tailhook convention. So this is pre-tailhook. So we were standing, it was New Year's Eve at the QB.0 Club.
I'm gonna get a shot of coffee, but I can still hear you.
Okay. And basically what it was is I was standing there with a couple of folks. We were having beers or something. And I can't visually remember. I'm going to try to find some pictures of it. But I remember standing there and maybe like when the bell rung or New Year's happened, like 100, maybe 50 or 100 guys. There was a lot of guys that ran through the O Club buck-ass naked. And it was really funny. And I just remember being kind of shocked about it. And the admirals were all, the admirals that were there were standing around. All the officers were standing around laughing. And I'm not sure if I had a feeling of dread, like this might not end well. But I just recall that being kind of funny. And now you have to remember by this time too, the O Club there, the bar, that whole tailhook setup they had was all gone. Like if you watch the movie Flight of the Intruder, and I don't know how much of that is true, but there used to be a setup where they had a little fake airplane that hung from a wire, and it would fly through the bar and out to this little pool, and you try to catch your tailhook or something. I think that was there. I went down and looked around the area, and you could see where there might have been a pool outside and a hole in the wall, and maybe that had happened, Yeah. All that was done by then. And then when you walk, so then to go out in town was a hoot. Like, you walked across the bridge, and, I was 22 at the time. I mean, you're not ready for that. A full-blown kind of human carnival, right? Oops, I think we lost. Hold on one second. Did we lose our Zoom? Oh, you went off video, bro. Just letting you know. Or I lost. Oops. Yeah, let's see. We'll have to pause it. Is to shut down as much stuff as you can, for what it's worth. Let me just switch to full screen here.
I think running multiple tabs of Chrome is a heavy lift.
Yeah, it's just good to shut off Chrome in the background if you can. So we're back on. All right, so we're recording again.
Yeah, I think we were about to go out in town.
Oh yeah, so we want to keep this kid friendly, but the thing about Longapo, it was just crazy. It was a really overload on your senses. There were lots of lights, and there were brothels lining the streets, and there were jeepneys, these jeeps that have been extended into like pickup trucks with seats in the back, and there were the sidecars, the little motorcycles with the sidecars on them.
Yeah.
And beers were 35 cents. For $20, you could just get loaded and get a girlfriend and get fed. I mean, it was insane. It was insane. And so I was probably there, went out 3 or 4 nights. But the fun part was, the thing that I just thought was hilarious was you could get the guys who drove the trikes, the little motorcycles with the sidecars, and you could go down back streets and you could get them to race, and then you would sit in there with maybe your buddy or just by yourself, and you'd race down the back streets, and then you'd give the guy like $5. And here's the other thing, just while I'm thinking about it, I'm having a lot of things come back to me. It's funny, when you go places overseas, there's always one guy in the group that has to negotiate, right? He's got to get into a haggling with the people. And my whole process was, these people are, it was great. I love the Philippines, but a lot of these people, they didn't have a lot of money. So I didn't haggle. I'm like, here, give me the piece of wooden art or whatever, right? Or the belt. Everyone got belt buckles made, I remember. You got your Philippines belt buckle, which was a kind of a longer buckle for your web belt. And they would hand do them, man. They'd put some wings in there and your name, Lieutenant Hugh Brien, or whatever it was, Lieutenant JG, or had the wings in there. And the guy would sit there with a freaking hammer and a chisel, and he'd knock that out and etch it by hand. And there was always one guy in the debt who always wanted to haggle. And I was like, bro, you just... he goes, you'll ruin it for everybody else. I was like, you're an asshole. That made me crazy. Like, why are you dickering? Why are you haggling with people? God, it used to make me nuts. Anyway, so just some of the highlights that I remember was a lot of guys in town. The power intermittently going out. That was fun. There was a bar with a mechanical bull. I remember that. That was all the shit kicker sailors from Oklahoma. There was always a half a dozen of them get off the boat, and you're in the hottest climate you've ever been in your life, and they're in cowboy boots, Wrangler jeans, a fucking giant cowboy belt, and a hat. And God bless them, but it just takes all kinds, right? And so those were the kind of sights and things. Just watching those guys do that always made me laugh. So there was that. What else? But it was hot and kind of dirty and fun, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a hoot. Something you would never experience, in America, I think. Not really. Not now.
I kind of want the not kid-friendly version of this story. Like,
well, it was just a lot of drinking. Really, it was, you could drink as much as you wanted, and I was a big partier back then. And like I was telling you, did I tell you this? I can't even remember. Like I raised so much hell when I was overseas and drinking that I don't remember a lot because I was really blacked out. Like one of the nights we went out, and I went out with my boss, and we went out to the bar, and then I would get like the switch would go off in my head, and I go, I gotta get back to my bed and get back to the ship. And I ended up, instead of going this way back to QB Point, I went the other way to the ship side, and I think I fell asleep on I remember being really hammered and laying down on a park bench, and I could see the carrier on the other side and on the other side of the bay. I go, I don't know how to get there. It was horrible. So that was one experience. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was good.
I can't cast a stone at that. I've been so drunk wandering around Bahrain.
Oh,
in streets that I know well, going, I have no idea where I am.
Yeah, when we were in Bahrain on my second deployment, I don't want this to be a big drunk log, but I got detained by the Bahrain guard shack before you went into the base there, and then I tried to sneak through because I was so hammered, and I tried it twice, and then the guy had the gun like holding it up to me, like he was going to shoot me. And then a Chevy Caprice rolls up, like a staff car, and the 6'6" Marine, a guy named Dave Landersman, gets out and he just goes to the guy and goes, hey, he's with me. And he grabs me, puts me in the car, and we drive away. Saved my life. And Dave was on my second deployment. He was a Marine captain at the time. He made colonel. He also won the Silver Star, believe it or not. Yeah, Dave Landersman won the Silver Star at Khafji which is a battle that happened on the border of Kuwait and Saudi Arabia during the Desert Storm conflict. And there was another guy there. You can look it up online. There's a couple of videos, and one of the guys in there was Kurt Lang. He was a guy that I met on the boat, really good guy. He had a whole crazy, we talked to Kurt Lang. He had a crazy story. At the time, he was a captain when I met him on the ship. And he had this crazy story to talk about the Battle of Khafji. But Kurt in of himself was a story. He was a Naval Academy guy who went into the SEALs and got injured in a car crash. And he couldn't go continue the SEALs, but he knew Colonel Ripley, who was the famous Marine, and he got in the Marine Corps. The guy only had like half of a lung. He was missing one lung or something. The guy was a PT stud. He was an animal. Kurt was awesome. He was really nice to me. I remember hanging out with him on the ship. But that's cruise number 2. That was my second deployment.
So your second deployment was like just chilling, having fun.
No.
Port to port. But that first one, what did HC-11 do to support Desert Storm?
We delivered a ton of the bombs to the carriers that got dropped, number one. So we vert-repped all those bombs. But we also made sure the mail got delivered. We would fly the mail around. Yeah. I'll tell you what, when you land on a ship that hasn't had mail in 2 weeks, you show up there, they're like, what can we get you, man? Let's get some box lunches out there and some cold sodas. And I remember we went up and we flew up north, and there was one ship, maybe it was the USS Ford, or I forget. It was one of the frigates. And those cats hadn't seen anyone in a while. They all had beards. They'd gone a little native out there. Not that you're that far from anywhere, but they were up north, and they just weren't able to port anywhere for a while. So they were real grateful to get the mail. And the other great story I had was me and my boss, Tony Shaddix, flew up north, and there was a frigate going through the water, and their flight deck was fouled. There were aircraft on it. Some of those black, the 160th Little Birds they had gotten on there, which was kind of cool. The SOAR guys, Special Operations Air Regiment guys. Anyway, they were cruising along about 20 knots, and we had to go there and drop off the mail, but they couldn't clear their deck. So what we did was, and I wish I had a picture of this, we hovered over the forward spot there, flying sideways, and we didn't have enough time. So we just got down to a 5-foot hover. We opened the door, the crewman sat on the steps, and we just handed the shit down to the guys while you're in a 4-foot hover flying sideways. That was fun. I'll have to ask Dave if he was in on that deal. Dave Zimmerman and J.R. Pass were two of the – Bob Groman, J.R. Pass, Dan Pyle, Dave Zimmerman. Those were our crew. And I'm forgetting somebody. I'll have to go look at my picture. I have everyone's name written down, but those guys are all the crew guys on the aircraft. Yeah.
So you kept the carriers supplied while they were launching sorties into Iraq.
Correct.
And kind of how long was Desert Storm? In my memory, it was like 3 days, but it was
about 2 weeks. I marked it off. Yeah, it was 2 weeks, and it was quick, and it was interesting. You know, the
short and sharp.
We flew a lot of hours. I had like 100 hours maybe in a 10-day period. Flew a lot.
Now, were CODs a thing? And so
sure.
The CODs would bring on the bulk of the stuff, but then you were like the onesie twosies, or how did that work?
Yeah, they would come in. The COD would land, and we were all in starboard delta waiting to go pick up all the stuff and bring it everywhere. Or a 53 would come in. So the COD would land. There would be a bunch of helicopters, or just one or two, but they would have everything staged there, and you'd go land. A lot of it was mail, and you'd pick up that. Now, the other thing they did was our ship on the Kansas. Yeah, but we did Holy Hilo on Sunday, flew the chaplain around. We did all the personnel transfers between the smaller ships and the carrier or whatever, medevacs. We did some SAR. We did mine hunting. Looking out for mines, because remember, the Princeton and the Tripoli both hit mines during that time. And we actually we resupplied both of those ships after they got blown up. That was a pretty interesting thing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the Princeton is a CG. It's a cruise.
They did?
They hit a mine, yeah. The Princeton hit a mine.
Did it sink?
No, sorry. Neither of them sunk.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone died on the Princeton, but 1 or 2 sailors died on the Tripoli. And they had a big hole. The Tripoli had a big hole in her forward, maybe on the starboard side. And, we repped them a couple days before, as I recall. And then we went back and did a little bit of resupply after they had that mine incident. Yeah, that was crazy.
I always like to close with this one. What can you describe for us your worst emergency?
There are a couple that stand out. One was kind of a screw up on my part. One was we almost crashed into the back of the boat one night. That was scary. What happened is we had, you fly around at night and it's black. It's blacker than black, and we didn't have night vision goggles back then. So we were doing night practice landings. We was with another guy, and the ship turned, and we just kind of lost. You lost attention for a second, and we were coming. As we came in, I was looking at the ground speed indicator on the Doppler, because we had a little Doppler radar on our aircraft, and it would give you ground speed. And I remember looking at it and looking at the airspeed, and the wind had changed. And so all of a sudden, the airspeed had dropped to, less than 20 knots, but our ground speed was still at 50. And, you don't have a lot of depth perception at night, and we were coming in way too hot. And I remember just yelling at my boss, I'm like, "We're coming in too fast," or something, and he pulled the nose of the aircraft way up. I remember just seeing maybe, like, the superstructure through the chin bubble. It was really, really terrifying. But the worst, so that was just kind of a screw up. That was scary. But the worst emergency we had was and I verified this story with J.R. Pass, who was my crew chief. He was the crew chief on the flight. We were doing a log run about 60 miles to the carrier. Halfway to the carrier, we blew a fuel control unit and started pouring gas. Gas started coming out. And we were really heavy at the time. We had about 6 people on board and all their luggage and some other stuff. And I don't think we were in comms with the carrier yet, maybe. We were probably at 500 feet, and we had all this fuel coming in, and we were heavy. And it was amazing how quick your flight training takes over, all the practice you do. So like, okay, we have to make a decision now. Go. We need to make sure we can fly single engine, number one, so I have to shut this engine down. Number two, which ship are we going to go to? So we turned around and we called the Kansas City and we said, hey, can you guys close on our position as fast as you can? So we turned around, they started closing on us. And I just remember going, I think we're going to burst into flames. So that was a little dicey. And as I recall, we had EOD guys on board, and we didn't want to throw their stuff out. And we also were a little nervous on the fuel situation because, we only had 2 hours of gas in the aircraft to begin with. And so you didn't go dumping fuel willy-nilly to get light because you just, there wasn't that much in there to begin with. So we climbed, as I recall, just in case we did lose an engine. We lost one of the engine that was leaking. And eventually, but then we don't think we threw anything out, but we just closed with the ship and got back. I mean, it sounds not as bad as it was, but it was pretty scary because I can't remember if we shut the engine. I'm sure we did. I just can't recall. Then we had those are a couple, but that's maybe the scariest. One night we were flying around and we had an oscillating load, wouldn't stop, just going back and forth. And it was late and we were at the end of a long day. And we didn't want to dump it. But, flying in the black with your aircraft, and the only thing you can do is slow down. And it just kept going and going. It was a pretty heavy part of an aircraft engine, I think. That was a little dicey, but we got through that. Yeah. I don't know. And the other thing that had to happen was scary was sitting on the deck of the USS Tarawa, and it was a landing, a helicopter assault ship, with Marines on it and stuff. And they have helicopter spots, in sequence. And so we were sitting there and a Marine 46 was going to land in front of us. And, the distance between those rotors is not, it's not far. Mm-hmm. And they just slide in and our rotors are turning and he's coming in. And all of a sudden it's at night and and my crew chief is out there. He's right at my 1 o'clock on his long line, just outside the rotor arc. And this guy comes in and starts going all over the place. And I just remember going, oh my God, we're going to die because I couldn't move. I couldn't move, right? And I just remember that moment because it happened so fast. We had no time to react. And I just remember getting on the mic yelling, guys, take cover. And I go, just hold on. And he went all over and he landed, but he was he was probably 2 or 3 feet from impacting the island or something. It was nuts. It was crazy. So those are my couple of stories. Yeah.
Yeah. When you man up on what they call the finger, that's over by the LSO platform.
Right.
Guys are trapping right in front of your face. And
yeah.
I just learned early on, don't even look at that because there's nothing you can do about it. And if you look at it, you're just going to scare the shit out of yourself. Yeah. He's 6 feet from you. But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, at those speeds,
yeah,
he's a little too far left. He's going to hit you, and there's nothing you can do about that. And, but Hugh, I have got to run. I'm sorry that we didn't get to more. We could do a part 1 and 2 and 3 of all of these. And,
exactly.
I love this stuff. I love talking about flying, especially about how you felt. And what was going through your head. I wish we'd have gotten into some more detail, but thank you for your service and for your love of country and aviation. So,
all right, bud. Until next time.
I appreciate you coming on and,
all right, bud.
Until the next one.
All right. We'll see you next week. All right. See ya.